Godzilla knows of a titan that he can't handle alone. Here's your look at new Hiya Toys Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire, Exquisite Basic Series, Shimo. Based on Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire, which thrusts Kong and Godzilla into a colossal confrontation with an unknown menace lurking within the world. This impressive figure of the reptilian monster Shimo stands 6.6 inches tall and is crafted with stunning attention to detail, faithfully recreating every aspect of Shimo's appearance from the film. Each of Shimo's scales is lovely crafted with multiple layers of paint. The figure features multiple joints throughout the body, ensuring an authentic appearance while providing a wide range of articulation to recreate all the thrilling action from Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire. Way too cold for Godzilla to hold. I wonder if they could have gotten him a parka from the men's big and tall section. What's the largest size that they have? 100 XL? I think you probably even need a little bit bigger than 100 XL. Some good news, though, is if you guys are looking to get yourself the Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire Shimo, she is slated to drop in May 2025. We're in that month right now. I'd like to thank the folks over at Hiya Toys that were kind enough to provide this sample. We're going to take, of course, the tape measure, and we're going to measure two ways for Shimo. From the end of the tail to the front of the snout, and then we're going to go from the bottom to the top. Based at least on that, from the tail to the front, you're looking at Shimo impressively being 15 inches in length. That's pretty long. That translates, though, to a figure that's about 39 centimeters long. Then for its height, and while maybe it's not as high as it is long, Shimo is still quite impressive at 6 inches in height, or roughly 15 centimeters tall. Perhaps I may have done this a bit out of order, but here's what the figure looks like with the Stylist Series Shimo. Stylist Series Shimo is going to be slated to drop in September 2025, whereas the Exquisite Basic that we're about to have a look at in this review is slated to drop again this month. Size-wise, though, if you're looking at the two, granted, though, one is already pre-posed. I mean, the Stylist Series does already have a pre-pose assigned to her. There's no real way to manipulate those joints. Whereas, though, the Exquisite Basic does have some posability packed into the figure. From the length of the figure, if you're looking at this, this one's a little leaner, obviously, because they don't have to really rely on having joints so visible like this, where you'd be able to get in there and move the things around. If you were to extend out the tail, which obviously is pre-posed and locked in place, I would probably have said the Stylist Series is just a tad bit longer. Although, if you're looking at the two side by side, it does, though, seem like the Exquisite Basic series of her is going to be a little bit bulkier. Primarily more into the legs and primarily more into the waist, just because, again, she does have to have a little bit of movability to her. Moving, though, this one slightly out of the way, let's also bring in, of course, there is what she looks like with King Kong. And, of course, let's also bring in Godzilla. Godzilla, I would imagine, probably would be the one that you guys would be the most interested in to see for size. Let's just kind of move this one out of the way and getting Godzilla here just standing on his legs. I guess if you were to look at the tail, if you look at it from the front, the snout to snout, and tail to tail, I mean, obviously Godzilla isn't going to be as long, and he's certainly a little bit more compact in size. And then when you, of course, bring in back King Kong, she's quite considerably bigger than Kong as well. Just going to bring this back in. This was the ice crystal that came included with the Stylist Series Shimo. Much like, though, the statue of Shimo, the ice crystal doesn't really do anything other than just being a decorative detail. Now, there is no accessory that comes included with the Exquisite Basic of Shimo, but because, again, there's so much that it was more involved with her, because, of course, she has to have movable limbs to her, I don't mind at all that Hiya Toys left off the accessory. Funny, though, enough that I did mention this in the review of the Stylist Series, that both the Stylist Shimo and also the Basic Shimo are the exact same price. This one is selling for $59.99, or at least being pre-ordered online is $59.99, and the same could be said for the Stylist Series. Having now both of these also in camera here, I also want to point out that there's a weight difference really between the two. I was really surprised with how much heavier the Stylist Series of Shimo was when you compare with the Exquisite Basic. I'm guessing that there's probably a little bit more hollow plastic with at least her body cavity. Maybe there's probably more denser plastic to her limbs, but that's probably one of the reasons why there's such a size or weight difference between the two. Because, again, like, she doesn't really have to be doing anything other than what she's really doing right now. There is also quite a lot of color differences between the two. Now, when we had done the review, though, of the Stylist Series, I did talk about there's a lot more paint, I feel, that gets afforded to the statue that doesn't really get as much on the Exquisite Basic. But also, too, when you see the crystals on the top of her back, there's quite a lot of color differences really between the two as well. If you're looking at like the stylus, for example, more really relying on pastel blues and lighter whites, whereas when we get to looking at the Exquisite Basic, now they bring in these darker blues and darker purples. Like the contrast, especially for the fact that the figure relies so much on like this pearl color, I think the darker blues and purples work really well as a contrasting color. Face sculpt standpoint, you can see though that the Exquisite Stylus series, or the Exquisite Basic series, which is this one right here, has a much wider head. This one is a little bit leaner of a head and a leaner body as well. Colors, again, to look at the two, I feel like there's a little bit more opportunities that have been given to the Stylus series. There's a little bit more purples dancing in there as well, a lot more of that pearl color, especially on the undercarriage of the body. Whereas when we look at like the Exquisite Basic, while the Basic still has that, I don't think it has it nearly to the level of what we're getting here with the statue. One thing that's really cool, though, about the figure is how much posability that they packed in her. Obviously, we're going to be looking at the head sculpt here. Now, the mouth does open and close. Inside, though, the mouth, you can also see as well that Shimo does have a tongue. The tongue does have posability, although it's a little hard to kind of at times get your finger in there and move it around. But it does seem that it's only just a peg or a ball joint, so it allows the tongue to move up and down. The teeth are very small, but I feel like they're actually smaller than when we got with the Stylus series. The little sharper down below, I guess, for the bottom teeth, but I think like the rest of the teeth are tinier on the Basic than were on the Stylus. The eyes are, again, very hard to read and smaller to read. I feel like, though, there's a lot more white, obviously, added to the head of the Basic than there was on the Stylus. Stylus does really rely on a little bit more of the airbrushing of pinks and a little bit more of the purples, whereas, like, the Basic, I think, feel more comes across more as a primary white, with just, again, like some colors added to it. You got some nice scaling there on the side as well. Like, the eye is very hard to read, very small to see. But again, like there's going to be a lot more posability, obviously, on this release of her. Looking again across the scales here. The scales, again, I love the coloring of the purple that they've used with the blue. It doesn't have to necessarily blend evenly. I mean, there are some areas where there's definitely a lot more purple than there are the blue. But I feel like there's just the right amount of this darker color. It's one thing, though, while I feel like the rest of the figure's body does suffer. It doesn't have nearly the paint that the Stylus series had. I think I like the scales, though, a lot more on the Basic. Of course, if you look at the undercarriage as well, there's, again, a lot of cool sculpting happening on the undercarriage. Unfortunately, though, I did notice getting Shimo out of the package that her legs seem already to be developing looseness, primarily like in the joints here where I guess it would be like the knuckle joint or the elbow joint of the legs. Those seem to be already starting to develop looseness. I'm hoping, though, it's not going to be something that's going to be getting worse over time. But again, like looking at the rest of the details, again, she's got the long linked tail. The tail itself does have inner links to them, so you can move the tail around. If you're, though, expecting to be able to go in there and bend the tail to the level of what we got with the Stylus, really, you can't do that. I mean, yes, sure, there's a link here, and of course, as you carry along to the bottom of the tail, there are individual links, but sort of like Godzilla, there's only so much that you can do with it. You can get it to about there, but you wouldn't be able to get it as extreme as we got with the Stylus. One thing that also was pleasant to see as well is that this version of Shimo does actually have posability in her individual fingers. Now, they're not on the back, though. The feet themselves on the back are completely just solid pieces, so there's nothing that you can individually move here. However, though, the front hands, I guess the front, not the hind legs, but the front paws, they do have some individual posability in the fingers. Now, they're posable not only in just the actual front knuckle, but in some of the cases as well. Like, there's posability in the I guess the claws or the fingers closest to the mouth, where you can actually bend the joints in two places. That's really cool. I wasn't expecting that at all. In fact, for the figure's posability, there's a fair bit going in here. The head can rotate forward and back. You can move it up and down. The mouth does, of course, open and close. And as already mentioned, you can also get in there as well and move the tongue up and down as well. Although sometimes when the tongue gets pushed up like this, it's really difficult to get back in there and pull it back out. You might even, in fact, have to take yourself like a little screwdriver or something very small and just try to fish that back out. Careful, don't do what I just did. Once you push the tongue really high in there, it's almost difficult. It's next to impossible to pull that back out. So you have to get yourself something a little small to fish that out. But again, like the head does rotate forward and back. You can move it up and down. There's also as well a ball joint at the base of the neck. So you can also move that up and down as well. And you can rotate it. Rotating it does a lot better than trying to move it up and down. There's only so much really that you can do with the size of the frame. The legs move forward and move back. You can also bring them out. You can't bring them out much, though. That's as far out as they can actually get. Now here is, again, something I was mentioning when I got this out of the packaging. I have only really had Shimo out of the packaging for maybe about 2 hours, and I've already noticed that there seems to be real looseness here happening in the joints. This seems to be something that's a plaguing problem with anything that's really on fours. When you start to have like really legs relying on weight, holding weight up like this, elbow joints, or what would be the equivalent of that for legs, tend to always really be an issue. I don't want to say knees. I guess technically could be knees, but these always seem to be something that develops looseness over time. I'm sad to say, though, unfortunately, already at the packaging and within the little bit of time that I've had this out, she's gotten loose here and she's gotten loose here. In fact, actually has 2 joints in the legs themselves. The bottom of the legs, however, do have some posability as well, so you can rotate those back and forth and up and down. The paw as well can be moved up and down and rock back and forth. And as we've already looked at as well, you've got individual posability on the fingers. Each of these only have 1 single joint, so you can move those up and down. But the one that's closest to the body actually does have 2. You can move those 2. Then the back section, this about midway through the body here, there's actually a secondary joint that can move up and down. It moves better up and down than it does back and forth. Back and forth is really where more of the limitations are. The back hind section of the body does also rotate too. I mean, I guess you could technically rotate it all really around. I'm not really sure why you'd want to do that. The hind legs move forward and back, also out. There's also a joint right here to allow the leg to bend. There's a joint right here, and then there's a joint here. So you got 1, you got 2, you got 3, and then you got the bottom one for 4. The foot also does have a ball joint right here, so you can move this up and down. This also rocks back and forth. But again, to look and start tallying, counting all of these, if you start to count out how many joints of these, that's how many individual joints could have developed looseness over time. So far, though, knock on wood, the only ones that have been loose are the ones on the front. The ones on the back have still done pretty good of enough job to kind of hold the weight up of the creature. But I already have noticed, I mean, like, look at the lower leg, how loose that's started to develop. It's not as bad as the front, but the back, though, is starting to get a little loose there, too. Of course, the tail does have joints, so it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 8 joints where you can actually move the tail back and forth. It moves freely, but again, not to the level of what we got with the Exquisite Stylus, or the Stylus series. All in all, though, it's a nice looking figure. I mean, I think if I was to choose one over the other, I probably would have really gone with the Exquisite Basic, more just because I really like to be able to go in there and pose the figure around. I definitely see, though, the merits of why some collectors would only really favor to get the Stylus series, because the Stylus series, you don't have to worry about the articulation. You don't have to worry, though, that like arms or legs in that matter are going to start to develop looseness over time. And you can also, a lot of times, get poses for the characters that you'd never be able to pull off when it comes to the Basic series. The Basic series, though, of Shimo definitely does look the part. My biggest only issue really kind of comes down to the legs. The legs, out of only the 2 hours that I've had this figure out of the packaging, are already starting to get loose. Not to say that she has to really carry the weight of what the Stylus series would have, because the Stylus series of Shimo definitely is a heavier figure or statue. But getting this out of the packaging, I'm already kind of disappointed that there's looseness happening here on the tops of the legs. I mean, with this being the thing that holds the figure upright, I would hate to think, at least she has 4 of them and not just really relying on the 2, but having 4 legs and getting looseness already, I would worry that that's going to be a big issue moving forward, where the figure's going to be having a harder time to hold her weight. If giving, again, the choice, the fact that both these are going to be selling for $59, you can go the option of the statue of Shimo. You can better go the option of getting the posable version of Shimo. They're going for the exact same price. A few months, obviously, separating the 2 out. But again, like, some would only really choose to kind of collect the ones that are having the posability or the articulation. Some like the statues. I can understand why there's definitely a market for both. If I really, again, had the choice, I probably would have only really gone with the articulated version of her, just because the majority of my collection when it comes to statues, I mean, my statues are kind of like one thing. I like to have kind of posable figures. I love to be able to, like, go to Kong, for example, just as an example. I like to be able to go to Kong from time to time on my shelf and just kind of move his arms around. I like to be able to do that. You can't do that, obviously, with the Stylus series. You can do that, though, with the Exquisite Basic. The Exquisite Basic of Shimo looks fantastic. I just worry, though, about the longevity of her legs. That's all. 4-legged creatures tend to have issues with their legs. It has more really to do with the fact that a lot of times their knees aren't on the fronts of their legs, but rather on the back. Because they bend the way that they do, and having them to rely on holding up their own weight, that's usually at times when it causes looseness in legs. Now, I have said already in this review that only having to figure out the packaging for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. Not that I was really getting too aggressive with moving the legs around, but I have noticed, though, especially the back elbow joint. I'm going to call it an elbow joint primarily just because of the way it bends on the front of Shimo's body. That elbow joint is the way that, because it's bent that way, it's putting weight in a way that really isn't supporting itself. Had it been, for example, where the knee on the back, the hind leg, for example, see how the knee is on the front. It's not on the back. So because of that, it can hold its weight a little bit better. And it always seems to be the case. Whether you look at a battle cat, whether you look at an alien, anything that has 4 legs, usually it's always the front leg because it has to bend the opposite direction. It's already starting to buckle in on the weight of itself. Despite that, though, I'm hoping that it's going to have some longevity because this is a figure I would love to have on my shelf for a long period of time. Hiya Toys is some of my favorite things from a sculpting standpoint, especially if you're a big fan of like the Godzilla or like just the universe that Godzilla has created. Hiya Toys has been really backing the franchise for a while. I mean, if you look at really the scope of King of the Monsters, we have Godzilla vs. Kong, Godzilla X Kong. Now we're expanding the lore even further by adding all those other characters that appeared in the films as well. Now, we don't have Scar yet. I think Hiya has already advertised or previewed some images of a Scar, so we're going to be getting that at some point as well. And I think we're also getting a brand new Kong that's going to have his augmented arm. Definitely looking forward to that because, I mean, as you saw in this review, how many times have I brought back in that exact same Kong? I still like the look of that Kong, but I think Kong needs an upgrade. He got an upgrade in the movie. It's time that he gets an upgrade in a figure as well. Now, this one, again, is slated to drop in May. You had to wait a little longer to get the Stylist series of Shimo. She was slated to drop in September 2025. You don't have to wait as long, though, if you're looking to get yourself the Exquisite Basic series. She, again, is going to be dropping in May, and she's going to be selling for $59.99. The same exact price as the Stylist series. For at least that, you don't have to necessarily choose one over the other solely based on budget. If it's just collection and the way you like to collect your figures, having them being both $60, you can easily look at one over the other and say, you know what, I want to get this version of Shimo because I'm the kind of collector that likes posability. Whereas another collector could say, you know what, I'm a statue guy myself. One thing at least is that they made the prices affordable. $60 for either one. That's not a bad price at all. A big thank you again to the folks over at Hiya Toys that did provide this sample of the brand new Godzilla X Kong, the New Empire. This was the Exquisite Basic Series Shimo. Nice looking figure. If you guys did enjoy this video, you can do it a solid and throw it a like. You guys want to stick around for more so? I hope so. Hit that subscribe and, of course, turn on the bell. Turning on the bell does help to know when new videos are going to be popping up here on this channel. There are going to be a couple more Hiya Toys reviews coming your way, so hopefully you're coming back for that. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.